generosity. So he was obviously talking about the great merit of generosity, and how a person who is genuinely generous is going to get along very well in the world, and going to find that people like him, get along well with him. We pointed out that a person should not be giving money with the intention of getting that reciprocity. He should be giving money, giving things, giving of his talents to the world for the purpose of doing good. The result of that will be that good will come back to him as well, but that of course shouldn't be the reason why he should do that. That a person can be good using his wealth, a person can benefit others through his bodily talents, and another third area that he said that people can be of benefit to others is through their intelligence, things that they do to help other people with their intelligence. So he said it's a very important thing. And another thing he mentioned about being benevolent is that it's actually better to give anonymously, so that people don't know who's giving, and the recipient, the person who's giving doesn't know who's receiving, and the receiver doesn't know who's actually giving. And somebody pointed out at the end of the class that there's a very interesting story about a rabbi and a rebbitzin, his wife, who were very charitable to people, and they tried to give in a way that other people would not know. And one time they would, somebody who was receiving them wanted to know who actually was that was giving to them. So he kind of hid and caught them by surprise, and they ran away, and he was on their heels, and they had nowhere else to go. So they jumped into a furnace, which was lit. And I guess the idea is that they preferred to kind of subject themselves to being in a furnace rather than exposing the fact that they were giving. In any case, neither were harmed by the flame, but the husband was a little scorched. The wife was not. And after they got out of the oven, the husband said, "Why am I scorched and you aren't?" She said, "Well, you're very generous, it's true, but you give money. I bake bread and fulfill needy people's, readily needed needs right now." So I imagine the point of the story is to show that it's very good to give, but it's even higher degree to do chesed than to do tzedakah. The difference is tzedakah is usually giving monetary help, and chesed is doing more than that. And that was one of the points that we left. It was relevant because that was the point that we left off here, that it's good to give tzedakah, but it's better even to give that tzedakah in the form of chesed. And that was based on the pasuk which says, "Ziru lechem tzedakah, kitzu lefi chesed." You should plant according to, let's say, tzedakah, but do so in a way in which you reap according to chesed. And this was a verse that the author brought to support the idea that, for example, instead of giving money for the poor person to buy bread or meat, go ahead and buy the bread yourself or the meat yourself and save the poor person the need to do so. Or, for example, if you have money for a poor person, which you intended to give them, let's say, a week from now, and all of a sudden the prices go down of bread, meat, milk, staples, give him the money now. And don't wait for a week, because he'll be able to get more for what you give him now that the prices are low. So even in that scenario where you're giving money as opposed to doing an act, you're doing it with chesed because you're coordinating at a time that is going to get the most out of it. So not only are you giving the money, but you're also doing a chesed by giving the money at the right time, at an opportune time. So this was the point here now. Now, continuing on the next paragraph on Kuf Kaf He, he says, "Va'ata." Now, Shema hashivus hanedivus uba'ale hatzdaka. Here, hearken to the importance of generosity and those who do tzedakah. As it says in Mishlei, tzedakah tiroimem goy. Charity will elevate a nation. Borei kamsi. Kama gadol koach shel tzedakah, how great the power of tzedakah is. Shinasuna b'yeminu shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's in the right hand of God. It says here, it's punctuated yeminu. It has to be yemino. In the right hand of God. Shenemar says, tzedek mola yeminecha. Righteousness or charity fills your right hand, God. So we see that charity, and by the way, when a person does give charity, actual monetary charity, if he's right-handed, and perhaps even if he's not, it's customary to do so with one's right hand. Like it says in the pasuk, Yamin Hashem osel chayil. The right hand of God does greatness, and therefore when you're emulating God in trying to do good, great deeds, we should also do so with the right hand.
Is that why right hand represents mercy?
Yeah. Right hand represents mercy. And the midah of mercy is gedula. Gedula is a word for chesed. And therefore, yes, it should be done that way. For most people, the right hand is the stronger, the more dexterous hand. And therefore, what we're saying is that a person should put more of his talents, strengths, and energies to doing, as opposed to the left hand, which is weaker. The weaker hand should be used in a case where din is necessary, judgment is necessary. Sometimes judgment is necessary, but it should be executed with the left.
That's why you wrapped the tefillin with the stronger, with mercy, and you wrapped on judgment.
Yes, it could be. Tzedek mala yeminecha. Nedoila tzedakah, very great is tzedakah. Sheba nishtabeach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Let them have a small doche v'yamin mekarev. The pasuk says, the teaching says, that a person should always have his left hand be the one to use to push someone off. Meaning, if you have to kind of reprimand somebody or rebuke somebody, you should do it with the left hand, as it were. Meaning, with your weaker arm in a weaker way. V'yamin mekareves. But the right hand should be the one used to bring people close. So, for example, with children, you might sometimes have to rebuke them, but you should do so in a weaker way. A much stronger way, give them the opportunity to come back. Yeah, you definitely don't want to push children off, through reprimanding them and criticizing them and punishing them, without always giving them, a way back, a way in. Children are very sensitive, as people are in general, and anybody who's rebuked feels ashamed and wants to run away. And if you rebuke a child and you shame him time and time again, right, he's going to ultimately want to run away. And you don't want your child to run from your home, and you don't want a Jewish child to run away from the fold of Judaism. Doesn't mean you should never rebuke. But the rebuke should be weaker, and the carrot, the carrot and the stick. Right, the stick should be shorter and the carrot should be longer. You have to do that. Otherwise you just risk ruining a person in general, which is a very upsetting thing, and pushing them away from their parents, their siblings, their family, the Jewish people. Yeah.
So is that like the metaphorical left hand too, or?
Metaphorical.
Because sometimes you don't. I don't have kids, but it's not just physical; it's also.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about physical punishment. I meant to say, in terms of just rebuking a child.
Okay.
You shouldn't do that. How can you do such a thing? Or it shouldn't be that way. And you can point out the children. You can certainly point out the fault, but you'd also include a constructive way of rectifying that fault, correcting it for the future, and also giving the child the ability to save face, without the feeling like they have to run away and hide. Gemara says, a person who asserts let's say overly asserts his authority at home is going to end up eating treifa. Why? Because people at home make mistakes, and if he runs his household with such a heavy hand, rather than own to doing something wrong, they'll keep it from him, and he'll end up doing all types of transgressions. So basically, a person who is overly authoritative is undermining his position. It's too much. You can't do that. It's just not right. It's not right in general. It's not right nowadays. Therefore, a person has to, point out to a child what he's done wrong. If he's done something dangerous to himself or others, you have to be very serious about that. But at the same time, whatever it is, give the person hope that he can correct now, and that you're not angry at him, but at what he did. I love you very much. I'm angry at what you did, but that doesn't compromise my love for you. Child has to know that. So it says here, "Gdolet tzedakah shebo nishtabeach Kadosh Baruch Hu b'shah she'osid lahavi teshua l'Yisrael." In the future, when God is going to bring redemption for the Jewish people, Shneimar, it says, "Ani medaber b'tzedakah rav lo hishia." I will speak with righteousness and am great, meaning will bring about a great salvation. Gedolet tzedakah, charity is also very good. Shemin shamancheles kavod v'chaim oseha. It brings about honor and life to those who do it. Shneimar, as it says, Roidef tzedakah v'chesed yimtzor chaim tzedakah v'chavod. A person who runs after doing charitable deeds, pursues doing charitable deeds, and also righteous deeds, such a person will find life, righteousness, and honor, glory. Umishum de roidef tzedakah yimsa tzedakah. What? Because he pursues doing charity, he'll find charity? What's that mean? Ella HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamtzi lo mo'os kedei la'asos mehen tzedakah lifnei adam hamehu ganim. Rather, what it means is, God will bring him money in order to be able to do that tzedakah, like we said yesterday. Yeah, when a parent gives his child, let's say, how do they call that? An allowance. And the parent sees that the child uses the allowance for all types of nice things, like to buy books to learn and to read, or to buy gifts for people as appreciation for things they do to him, and all types of other things as well. He's using that money properly. More than happy to give him more. But when he sees the child wasting it on sweets and candy and all types of other garbage and everything else, the parent's going to think twice about whether he should and how much he should give to the child, because the child squanders it in wasteful things. When God sees the way that a person uses his money responsibly by taking care of those who God wants him to take care of, so God says, that was nice of you. You mean you gave to your poor brother? Here, take some more. Have some more for yourself. And you know what? I'll add a little more, so in case you find some other brother to give to, you'll still have some for some left for yourself. Mamtzi lo ma'os kedei la'asos mehen tzedakah levnei adam hemu gonim la'asos lehen tzedakah kedei lekabel mehen sachar. And this is in order for the person to be able to give more money, to do more charity, and thereby receive even more reward. So the reward is not the money. The reward is what he's going to get for giving the money as charity. Gdolet tzedakah, furthermore, he says, right, tzedakah is also great. Sheba asi l'Kadosh Baruch Hu lifdois Israel. It's through charity that we're told in the verse that God will ultimately redeem the Jewish people. Shneimar, as it says, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh, that Zion through justice will be redeemed. V'shaveha b'tzedakah, and those who will receive the right of return will do so through charity. Gdolat tzedakah sheba nishtabeach Avram Avinu. Also, we find that it was through charity, through the venue of charity, that Abraham was praised, as it says, Shneimar, in the third line, V'he'emin b'Hashem, that Avraham, believed in Hashem, V'yechshaveha loy tzedakah, and it was considered for him as if it was tzedakah. That's very interesting. V'he'emin b'Hashem, that Avraham believed in Hashem, and it was considered for Avraham, as if he had given tzedakah to Hashem. I mean, until that point, nobody believed in God, really. Maybe just an individual or two. But God was like a pauper, as it were. Nobody would give him, as it were, any recognition. Nobody believed in God. Nobody turned to God. Nobody spoke to God. People were involved in idolatry, magic, witchcraft, wizardry, things like this. So when Avraham came to a realization of a belief in God, that was considered like an act of tzedakah. He was doing charity, as it were, with God himself. Yeah.
God doesn't need man's recognition.
God doesn't really, that's why I said as it were, God doesn't need people's recognition. It's true. And if God demands the recognition, it's really for the benefit of those who recognize and not he who's being recognized. But still, it's as if Abraham was giving, as it were, to God what was important to be given for Abraham. And still it was considered for him as if he had done it like an act of charity, because God, as it were, was like lacking this, quote unquote, lacking this recognition. So maybe that's the reason why it's described as tzedakah. God's not affected by the fact that that wasn't the case. But it's an interesting verse. And furthermore, it says regarding Avram, Ki yadativ, God says about him, I know him. Leman asher yitzaveh es banav, and I know that he will certainly command his children after him. Vez beso acharav, v'shamu derech Hashem, and they, through Abraham's command, instruction, and guidance, will guard the way of God. Lasois tzedakah u'mishpat, to do righteousness and justice. Leman havi Hashem al Avraham es asher diber alav. And this was all in order for God to bring upon Avraham all that he had promised to do, because he knew that Avraham would pass on the baton of belief in God to his progeny. But it was predicated upon righteousness and charity. There's an idea that when a person gives charity, he's actually doing a special unification of God's name, and that's actually represented tangibly in the act of tzedakah of itself. When a person, for example, takes a coin or money or whatever it is that he's giving, so the coin itself corresponds to the letter Yud, which is kind of rounded and smaller than the other letters. That's the Yud. He takes it in his hand, which has 5 fingers. Right? That's the Hey. So he takes the Yud and the Hey, and he puts it in the outstretched hand of the poor person, which is the final Hey. So you have Yud, Hey, and Hey. Where's the Vav? To make that unification, that connection, which is what the letter Vav means. A Vav is a connector or a hook. That's the outstretched arm. So he's actually making a Yud, Hey, and then a Vav and a Hey, right? That the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, is infused and permeating every act of charitable giving. A person should have that in mind when he gives tzedakah, that the chibur, the connection between he and the person he's giving to, bring about a unification, a rectification of the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yeah. Gedoyle tzedakah shebo nishtabeach David Melech Yisrael shenemar. Tzedakah is also great because we see King David was praised, as it says, V'yeh David oisei mishpat u'tzedakah. We find David did righteousness and charity, l'chol amoy, to his entire people. We find righteousness and charity go together. G'doyle tzedakah sheba nishtabeach Shlomo Melech alav v'shalom. We also find that King Solomon was praised because of tzedakah shenemar, as it says, V'yeh Hashem Elokecha Baruch asher chafetz b'cha l'sittecha al kisei Yisrael v'avas Hashem es Yisrael lo'olam v'yesimcha lemelech lasois mishpat u'tzedakah. The promise of God to Solomon that he should reign forever, his kingship should last forever. It says, V'hi Hashem Elokecha Baruch, God your God shall be blessed, asher chofetz b'cha, who desires you, l'sittecha al kisei Yisrael, to place you on the throne over Israel, ba'avas Hashem es Yisrael, because of the love of God for the people of Israel, lo'olam, forever. V'yesimcha lemelech, and therefore God will place you, Solomon, the melech as a king, lasois mishpat u'tzedakah, to do righteousness and charity. A string of teachings here about the greatness of tzedakah continues and says, G'doyle tzedakah shemega'as ad kisei hakavod. This charitableness reaches, the importance of it reaches all the way to the throne of heaven. Shenemar, as it says, tzedek u'mishpat mechoin kiseicha. That, again, this combo of charity and righteousness are the foundation of your throne. B'chon kiseicha. Gdolet tzedakah sheba nishtabchu Yisrael. We find the Jewish people also praised through this attribute of being charitable. As it says, U'tzedakah ti'elonu ki nishmor la'asois. Again, it will be like charity for us. Our guarding and doing the ways of God. So that's also kind of described as kind of like a charity, right? We're giving to God. There's a verse in Tehillim which says, Tenu oz le'elokim. Give strength to God. Tenu oz le'elokim. Give strength to God. So the Gemara asks your question. Is God lacking anything that we can give to Him? Do we have the ability to give anything that He doesn't have? Of course, anything that we have was given to us by Him. So what does the pasuk mean when it says, give strength to God? And Mark explains what it means is, give, as it were, God the opportunity, the ability to give you. Meaning, of course, God has everything, and God is not lacking anything, and there's nothing that we can do to add or subtract from God. But we do have the ability, as it were, to empower God to give. God has the power to give. We can empower God by giving, by deserving it. We can also tie God's hands behind His back, as it were, preventing Him from giving, as it were. Of course, it's His decision not to give, but the point is it's a result of our, let's say, misdeeds. And therefore, Tenu oz le'elokim means give strength to God, enable, as it were, God to open up those floodgates in order to share His bounty with you. And that's in our power to do. So we're not adding power to God. What we're doing is we're enabling God to do what He wants, which is to give to us, but we have to be deserving of it. Tenu oz le'elokim. And that's also suggested in the word that's used in that verse for God, which is Elokim. Elokim, there are different names of God, of course, and one of them is Elokim. The name Elokim refers to God's mastery over all forces. And therefore, Tenu oz le'elokim means empower God such that He will be able to act upon the fact that He is the master of all forces. And in this way, He will give you or influence the world in a way which is going to be beneficial.
Allowing God to show His power.
Yeah. So we're not giving God power. We're empowering God. How did you put it? Allowing Him to show His power. Allowing, as it were, God to show His power. And that's in our hands. And God will also be praised Himself with charity on the day of judgment. Just a minute. As it says, V'yigba Hashem tzedakos b'mishpat. God will be elevated in righteousness, a verse that we say in Rosh Hashanah, coming up very soon. V'kel hakadosh nikdash v'tzedakah. And the holy God will become sanctified, will become, especially recognized because of His tzedakah, His righteousness, His charity. Ugdolat tzedakah shehi melave le'oisa b'shas petirasa min ha'olam. Tzedakah is also very great because it escorts one who does the tzedakah at the time that they depart from the world, at death. Shneimar says, "V'holach lefanecha tzidkecha." Your righteousness will go before you. Kvod Hashem Yasefcha. That your righteousness will go before you, and in the glory of God you will be gathered, meaning, I guess, gathered at death, like we find death is referred to being gathered to one's people. Godol chesed shebo nivna ha'olam. Furthermore, we find that chesed is an attribute upon which the world was established, created. Shneimar says, Olam chesed yiboneh. That the world or creation, chesed, through chesed, kindness, yiboneh, was built. L'chach yidba ka'odam b'midas nedivus shegoremes kol hatoivos elah. Therefore, a person should cleave to this very important attribute of charity, of being generous, because it brings all of these wonderful things. Since I think this is the first time in the book in any of the attributes that he's brought so many sources just in a line like that, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other, to show the greatness of that attribute. Yeah, what were we going to say?
The previous idea explains why Abraham was, I don't remember what the actual words were.
About what? Avram's being generous?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because he empowered God too in a way.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Exactly. That was the point. That's what I was saying, that, what I said there was intended to complement what we learned earlier about how is it that serving God is described as it were doing charity to God. Right. Yeah. Wow. It's giving God as it were the ability to express, to demonstrate His loving kindness. Yeah. And nobody else was doing that. Right. So Avram, by serving God, was giving him as it were, allowing him to act in a way with the world which he was not doing heretofore. He might have been acting with the world and preserving it for certain reasons, but it was only through Avraham that he was doing it because people were actually deserving it. Yeah. A person should also be generous with his money to acquire mitzvos. For example, Kagon, Rabbi Gamliel shekana esrog be'elef zuz. Rabbi Gamliel bought an etrog for 1,000 gold pieces. Very expensive. Yeah, but he put a lot. So he's very generous with his money in order to do this. So where's the generosity? Who's he being generous with? Again, with God? But okay, well, why is that called generous? I mean, he's spending a lot of money for the mitzvah. Fine, that's perhaps very praiseworthy. But why is that considered generosity?
He's allowing other Jews to do mitzvahs.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Maybe the point is, which was the custom certainly in Europe, where estrogim were not very common. Community would buy one for the entire community. So wealthy people would in fact buy the estrog, and in this way buy the mitzvah for the entire community. That's being very generous. It was like an honor, in fact, to buy the esrog. Would buy the esrog for the Rav, for example, and with the understanding that this would be the esrog for the entire community. That was a very great thing.
But if you don't have the means, then you shouldn't. Right?
That's right. If you don't have the means, you can't.
Well, I mean, sometimes you're in debt, but you can't. You shouldn't use a credit card. Basically, you should borrow money to give, right?
I don't know. I mean, to give, no, but for mitzvahs, yes, yes, might depend. Like levu alai banai v'ani porea. Borrow, and it's on me. I'll take care of it. Borrow for Shabbos, and I'll take care of it.
But it's a mitzvah to give.
Yes, it's a mitzvah to give if you have to give, but you don't have to. Loaning to give is not considered giving. Right. Okay. Yeah. Charity is only if you have to give. If you don't have to give, so there's no mitzvah of charity. You're exempt. Let me put it that way. Not that it's a mitzvah of charity, but that you're exempt from being required to give charity. That being said, sometimes what people will do is, even poor people will give charity to each other. So this way they fulfill the mitzvah of tzedakah without depriving themselves of the very little that they have. Or let's say Torah students who might have a very low income or living on a stipend and are therefore exempt from, let's say, giving tzedakah, might nevertheless take meiser and exchange. So I'll give you and you give me, and this way we both fulfill the mitzvah of meiser without having to, without giving what we can't afford to give. Right? So they fulfill the mitzvah this way. Yeah. Vodei novid b'momono liknois hamitzvos k'gon Rabbi Gamliel shekona esrog ve'elef zuz. V'ei nodif b'momono lahader b'mitzvos. He should also be generous with his money in order to beautify and to raise the value of the mitzvah. In order to, rather than doing it just in the most simple way, he should be generous with his money and make the mitzvah more elaborate. For hitter mitzvah ad shlish, and a person is actually required to add a third of the money for the purpose of fulfilling it in what's called a mehuder, more elevated type of a way. So if you use the example of an esrog, right? So a baseline kosher esrog, without any hidurim, any special kind of embellishments, might be X. So you're required to add a third for the purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah. You're required to add a third for the purpose of fulfilling the mitzvah in a way which is considered to be mehudar, not just baseline kosher, but mehudar. And there's clearly outlined in the halacha what aspects of an etrog, for example, are considered to be only baseline kosher and what's considered to be hidur. But this term, like mahadrin, often we find for kosher symbols, or lemhadrin mina mahadrin, that's what it comes from. It comes from the word hidur. Hidur. Hidur is like hadar. And hadar is like to glorify, beautify the mitzvah. And therefore he's saying that a person should be generous with his money in order to spend even more for the mitzvah in order to fulfill it, not only according to in a minimalist way, but in a mehudar way. Also, a person should be generous with his money to write books. Why would that require his being generous with his money? I guess, either just the expense of writing a book, which in those days was handwritten, or the publishing costs.
I can't imagine paper was very cheap back then.
Paper was cheap, you say?
I can't imagine paper
was not, right. Books were very important. Books were very expensive.
Or just writing a Torah, kosher Torah.
Yes, like a Torah scroll. Yeah, here he's talking about Sfarim, books in general, but certainly that would include the Torah scroll. There's a mitzvah, there's a general principle that you're not allowed to borrow something from somebody without their approval. You're not allowed to use something of somebody else's without their agreement. However, if it's an object which is it's a mitzvah object, there's a general rule which is that nicha le'inish le'abad mitzvah b'mamono. A person, we assume, is comfortable with other people doing mitzvahs with their possessions. So you can actually borrow a person's tefillin, for example, without asking him.
There are guidelines, though.
Yeah.
If you do it every day, it's like you're borrowing it every day. Is that okay?
I guess it might depend, but why not? Yeah, why not? And the idea is that a person is more than happy with the fact that people are using his possessions to do mitzvahs. One major guideline is that that's as long as it doesn't depreciate whatever the object is. So tefillin, there's really very little wear and tear on tefillin. A person can have a kosher pair of tefillin putting on every day of his life, and they don't deteriorate or anything like that. So putting them, not every day of his life, we don't put it on Shabbos, but which reminds me, I heard recently an interesting idea, kind of like a riddle. What person is required to wear tefillin on Shabbos? Because we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos. And for that reason, tefillin are even muktzah on Shabbos, because since you don't wear them, you have no... That's very good.
Someone doesn't keep Shabbat?
Why isn't he circumcised?
Why isn't he circumcised? I don't know.
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, just because he's not circumcised, he should be putting on tefillin, he should be circumcised.
You're going to have to complete 2 signs every day, and Shabbat is 1 sign, and...
Right, so rather than causing him to wear tefillin on Shabbos, we're going to get circumcised. But somebody's told me the name of Rav Chaim Kanievsky that the answer would be related to that, which is somebody who is not circumcised and can't get circumcised. Let's say for health reasons, the specific case that I heard in his name was a person whose, let's say, older siblings, God forbid, died because of circumcision, is exempt from being circumcised. Do we assume that there's something physiological about this family which can't accept the circumcision, so the person is exempt from circumcision? As a result of this, there's no way of circumcising. He remains uncircumcised for the rest of his life. Which means that in terms of fulfilling this special idea of having 2 osios, 2 signs of God's presence every day, he won't be able to have. Why? What are the signs? Every day a person's circumcised, which is 1 sign. And during a weekday, he puts on tefillin, that's 2 signs. Okay, on Shabbos itself is also a sign. So that's why we don't put on tefillin. A person is circumcised, remains circumcised throughout Shabbos. Shabbos is also a sign, that's 2. So you might ask, so what's wrong with putting on tefillin? So let him have 3. I guess the point is, if you're only supposed to have 2, if you put on tefillin, you're denigrating the kind of the os of Shabbos. Otherwise, why would you put it on the tefillin? Right? And therefore, you don't put on the tefillin. But a person who can't be circumcised, right, will only have will have an opportunity will only have an opportunity on Shabbos to fulfill two signs. During the weekday, he can't. He's not circumcised on the tefillin. Shabbos is the only opportunity they could have two: Shabbos and tefillin. So, according to this, he would be required to put on tefillin. There's no prohibition, by the way, of not putting on the tefillin. I guess we don't do it, like I said, because it would denigrate the value of Shabbos as an os. For this person who doesn't have milah, putting on tefillin would not denigrate the worthy of os of Shabbos. On the contrary, it's using Shabbos with tefillin to give him the two osios. But what we're saying is, therefore, that when a person is being generous with his belongings, that would certainly include the idea that people are more than happy with other people using their mitzvos, their money for mitzvos. That doesn't apply, however, for books. Why? Because books are very expensive, and we know that they depreciate through use. And therefore, you are not allowed, technically speaking, to use people's Torah books without asking, based on the idea that they'd be more than happy that people use their books for a mitzvah, because that's depleting the books. You can't assume that they would do so. And I'm just elaborating a bit on the point that you made that books in the old days were very special. They were not so common. They were very expensive. You didn't have, and nowadays that's actually not the case, because books are thankfully so easy to print, relatively so inexpensive, and so easy to replace, that you are allowed to use people's books without permission, unless they say do not use, or use on condition that you only use in this place, or use only in condition that if you take it from here, you return it to this place. If they write some condition, you have to fill the condition, but otherwise you can use it. So, therefore, a person should be charitable with mitzvahs as well, and do things to enable other people to fulfill them. And this is what it says in the verse: Hon ve'osher bevesoy, wealth and riches are in his house. His righteousness will last forever. Meaning, if you use your money to enable other people to fulfill mitzvahs, the merit of that mitzvah will always exist. He should be willing to give up his money like this. He should not be like upset and particular about loaning his books, even though they're going to get ruined because of this. Now, despite everything that I just said, which is that he's not required to loan out his books, and people are not allowed to take the liberty to borrow the books without permission, he's saying, nevertheless, a person, despite that, should go beyond what's necessary and loan the books, even though they might become damaged because of that. Certainly be reciprocated for the merit of the mitzvah that's generated because of people's using his books to learn. And also his household items, he should be generous in loaning them out to his neighbors and the folks who know him. Be generous when it comes to loaning money to the poor. Es kaspo is money. And if he's got enough, he should loan even to wealthy people. That's interesting. Even though wealthy people are wealthy and might be needing the loan to get more wealth, still, if they can use the money that way, so loan them the money, let them do it. All the more so if they've lost their wealth. Let him be generous in his business dealings as well. Right? Don't be a stickler on every little penny. Don't make a big deal about small things. Imhu moided yain o shemen o eze davar shehiyeh lo yitzamtzem. For example, if he's a merchant and he's measuring out oil or wine, things that he's selling, so it doesn't have to be in the milliliter. How many? You want 100 grams? Here's 100, 105.
People are going to take advantage of you like that.
Huh?
People are going to take advantage.
Well, you don't have to let people take advantage of you, but you can certainly always give them the benefit of give them the benefit. In other, like I said, 50 shekels for 100 grams. Here's 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 102. No, 100.
Especially if you see the
Came 102? Give him the 102. It's a stickler on these. So let him have more Better he have a little more, right? Yeah, yeah. Better that he have the benefit of the shavings, And that's the same thing I think should be with everything, with arguments, with discussions. If somebody's going to have like the shorter end, let it be me. I'm willing to take the shorter end and let him have the more. It doesn't mean I'm a turnover and I'm going to let people take advantage of me and all that stuff. No, just being nice and pleasant and lenient and flexible. You don't have to be so exacting on everything. And it's an attitude towards like all the different spheres of life and in the different modes of interaction we have with people. Yeah. All right, we're going to have to end here.